this is what 100% pill mill really, the worst of the worst, looks like.
America has the highest rate of prescription painkiller abuse in the world.
My family won't talk to me when I'm using. I'm not a nice person to be around. So it's a little hard to say.
New York's Staten Island has one of the worst problems in America.
He came in and gave me a kiss on the cheek and he went to bed. And the next morning I woke up and he was dead.
And there is evidence that a similar problem is developing in Australia.
They're the ones who pushed it out. They're the ones who made the money on it. It's overwhelming.
Staten Island is adrift, at the center of America's prescription painkiller epidemic. Here, the death rate due to opioid overdose is 3 times the American average. More people here die of a drug overdose than in a car accident. Young and old, rich and poor, all now considered at risk of becoming just another name on a death certificate.
This is 2 months. 2 months. Drug deaths that we handle. 2 months. They range in age from 60 to 16. Doctors and nurse, accountant, students, construction people, firemen.
Everyone in this room has been playing out their own role in a cautionary tale about a man-made epidemic. A story about how a harmless-looking little blue pill can tear even a small and tight-knit community like Staten Island apart.
It was just everywhere, you know, all these kids sniffing pills and eating pills and shooting pills. It was just, it was kind of surreal. Like, I couldn't believe, like, how many kids are fucked up in the game over here.
And how did it physically feel?
Physically, it felt great. It gave me so much energy. If there was a pain in my body, it went away. I suffer with scoliosis. I get back pains. And at first, I kept using Percocet as an excuse.
Do you remember the first time you took pills?
Yeah.
Tell me about it.
2002. There was a fight. You know, a friend of mine got his teeth knocked out. I got hit in the head with a bat. I went to the emergency room. Vicodin was right there. I went to my doctor. He gave me Percocet. You know, and then from there, it was just off to the races.
I really did put it through hell. And I feel horrible. I feel horrible, but I can't beat myself up over it either, because that was then, this is now.
Like Marco and Kayla, many on Staten Island started taking opioid painkillers for legitimate pain.
Before as well, just because somebody's doing it doesn't make them a bad person.
And then there are many others here who have been hooked since adolescence, having thought, the first time anyway, that pills were a bit of harmless fun.
That was fun.
You know, I just wanted to try every drug, really. I remember as a kid thinking, like, smoking pot, and this is great. I want to try other drugs, you know. I want to just try them all out.
And how early did that start?
I had smoked crack and PCP at like 14 years old.
And what was that like?
It was fun. It was amazing, you know. I loved it.
No wonder I got sick.
Danny arrived in high school just as the painkiller epidemic was breaking out. And in the last 10 years, he's become the rapper known, ironically, as Anonymous. Danny and his best friend Gerard are known around Staten as the White Trash Clan. Their cartoonish video for their track, My World is Blue, the color of Oxycontin pills, turned them into minor celebrities in Staten Island.
Hey yo, my man's on his way. 3 for 50, blue skies ahead. Are you with me? Crush the pill, roll a bill and sniff it. Rainbow sunshine, the kid is lifted. Painkiller paradise, Staten Island. 20 pill a day habit, cats are wildin'.
I knew people that were just going to doctors, multiple doctors, and getting crazy amounts of pills. You know, they pushed it out so much that it got so many people addicted to opiate drugs that it started an epidemic.
Staten Island was America's first modern suburbia, and it still has less than 500,000 residents. mostly Italian Catholic families that go back generations, and everyone here knows each other. Monsignor Jeff Conway is a recovered alcoholic himself. He'll preach about substance abuse.
He heard a voice that said, "This is the stuff that's killing you. You don't need it anymore."
And is often the first person anyone admits their addiction to.
He really thinks he
Father
heard the voice
Conway
of
says that
what's
the
in your
fact that everyone knows each other hasn't helped keep things under control. Just the opposite, he says.
I think it makes it easier for people to get their drugs, for one thing, because they know everybody, and to know who's using and who's not using.
It's very fast to get drugs here.
Very easy.
It's not just addiction that people are confessing to. It's also the things that they're doing to feed that addiction.
What kind of crazy stuff did you do to feed the habit?
Pawned my dead twin sister's jewelry, and that's the only thing my parents have left of my sister. And that's my twin sister. She was born with disabilities. The people at home are the ones that get hurt the quickest and most. They're the easiest targets. My son's not going to steal from me because he loves me. And the addict's mind is, my mom's the easiest target.
Like right now, I could be dead broke. I'm not gonna go to my mom's house and break in a window and steal things, you know what I mean? But when I was in active addiction, it felt like I had to do that.
As a prosecutor and a homicide prosecutor at one time, I've prosecuted cases where people have, killed their loved ones because they stood between them and their drug.
Did you ever steal? Did you ever do anything that you regret now? Because most people have.
Yes. I am the reason a lot of people did a lot of drugs for their first time. I've opened doors to people, and I wish I wasn't the one who opened the doors.
Kayla and her friends could always get pills. Opioid painkillers were being so overproduced and overprescribed that they were never hard to get, either legally or illicitly.
When you go into the pharmacy, I was getting, from one doctor, 180 oxycodone. With insurance, it cost $3. There was no oversight, zero oversight. So if you go to another doctor, all you have to do is just go to a different pharmacy and pay cash. And I did that 7 times, 7 doctors, 7 different pharmacies.
And you don't mean you did that 7 times in total? You
No.
did that 7 times a week?
7 times a week. Every Monday was doctor pharmacy day, and I did that for 10 years.
Unfortunately, there have been some professionals, pharmacists, doctors, who have entered into the illegal drug trade. In small numbers to get overtaken by greed, doctors and pharmacies included, and they went in for the money.
DEA Group Supervisor Eric Chiana is taking me to the site of one of the worst so-called pill mills located in the Bronx.
What we have here is the location that we surveilled for over a year.
He led a team that busted this medical clinic, where every day between 60 and 100 pseudo-patients would come to pay for illicit opioid painkiller prescriptions.
When I pulled up here, I immediately was like, this is what 100% pill mill really, the worst of the worst, looks like.
These surveillance photos give an idea of just how many people waited every day to see just one crooked doctor operating out of this storefront.
This place would cause 50 to 60 people easily be on the sidewalk, cars double parked across the street, businesses.
This single doctor, Robert Herdeman, was convicted of writing phony prescriptions for more than 3 million pills in less than 2 years.
I get what a drug trafficker is about. I get the greed factor, the violence. We get all that. I don't get a doctor who went to medical school, who took an oath to help people, who can guarantee to make a decent living, resorting to this. This is just unmitigated greed.
And what we know in narcotics prosecutions is that the bigger the supply, the bigger the demand. So the more of those addictive pills there are out there, the more addicts there are going to be.
But it wasn't just crooked doctors prescribing all these pills. In many cases, it was a doctor who was just in too much of a hurry.
You might be able to see a patient in 5 minutes in a busy practice, get him in and out, and I'm afraid some of my colleagues really don't want to expend that time, but it is important.
You know, I had 7 doctors. One of them said basically oxycodone is just a Band-Aid. You know, it's not going to solve the problem. And that was the first time when I first met with him. But 9 years later, he's still prescribing it to me.
I spoke with even highly respected doctors who were surprised that patients have reported experiencing opiate withdrawal after a regular 30-day prescription.
If you're going to be taking these pills for a month, say you get a month prescription, your body is going to get addicted to it and you're going to have physical withdrawals. Like, they should come right off the bat and say this. This is what's going to happen.
The active ingredient in opioid painkillers comes from here, the opium poppy fields of Tasmania, which farm almost half of the world's legal supply of opioid derivative. These are the same poppies which, processed differently, produce heroin. Part of the problem is that in America, a great deal of what a doctor knows about the medicines they're prescribing comes directly from the pharmaceutical companies that make them. The advantages of a product are aggressively marketed, while too often the risks of the drug are merely mentioned, contributing to the alarming overprescription of the best marketed painkillers.
The most obvious culprit is Big Pharma. They're the ones who pushed it out. They're the ones who sold the painkillers as non-addictive. They're the ones who made the money on it. And they're the ones who took over training doctors so that we now get a 30-day supply of Percocet for a toothache.
We often will see patients who require narcotics for their day-to-day care. And it's difficult for us to discern whether it's something that they truly need still at this point or something that they may be misusing or abusing. So we come upon that issue almost on a daily basis.
This one is cherry. All that means it's how one dealer is marketing his product and differentiating it from another dealer's. They put marks on the bags. So that's basically a dosage unit.
In 2013, New York lawmakers took action. They introduced a program called iStop to track prescribing across all doctors in real time.
Before we prescribe, we'll have to check a website to make sure that this patient has not previously received it from another provider a week ago, 2 weeks ago. More importantly, the patients now know that.
And then what happened?
You know, since the pills were hard to get, so that means the price goes up, you know, supply and demand. And the easier thing to get was, in my eyes, heroin. Cheaper, and it was more easily available. All the pill dealers became heroin dealers.
Basically, imagine if you just had.
And that's when the pill epidemic became a heroin epidemic, and things went from bad to worse.
Like, this is the button right here, like this. Like, I do it getting high. Boop.
Here in Staten Island, it's an epidemic. You know, it's
How easy is it to get drugged?
very easy.
How?
It's
How
too easy. You know, just pick up a phone or.
Because people have told me, like, it's as easy as getting a pizza.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I see the car. So I shouldn't have been surprised when only a few minutes later, a car pulled up outside, and I was called over to the window. Like almost all opioid addicts on Staten Island, Gerard started with pills and is now hooked on heroin.
See, when I'm high, I'm happy. When I'm not high, I'm suicidal. Or I'm like, I don't get fucked up and then I'm like, shit, I want to kill myself. I'm happy when I'm high, you know?
We saw those who were addicted to the pills shifting over to heroin because heroin's a lot cheaper. There's a huge supply of heroin that is coming up into the United States from Mexico, frankly, more than we've ever seen before.
This is actually a prosthetic leg that had about 1,200 grams of heroin smuggled into the country in it.
All of these are real smuggling containers for heroin, all from actual DEA busts. From suitcases to lollipops to tombstones made of pure heroin, all smuggled into a market primed by the opioid painkiller epidemic.
Those who have refined heroin and are distributing heroin are piggybacking on that addiction.
This is the site of a recent DEA heroin bust, and this kind of volume is something that Australian authorities are now being told to expect. Opioid prescriptions have tripled in Australia in the past 10 years, and US federal agencies say a wave of heroin is headed for Australia's shores. On Staten Island, the move from pills to heroin came with surging rates of overdose.
I died more than one time. They had to actually put a pacemaker on my heart because my heart would not work on its own. I ended up in a coma for 3 weeks. Every organ in my body failed: my heart, my liver, my lungs, my kidneys, and my gallbladder. My friend said I woke up screaming that I couldn't see and I couldn't hear. And unfortunately, I am now blind in my left eye and deaf in my right ear, and I have severe hearing loss in my left ear.
You ask anybody on Staten Island if do you know somebody that overdosed? They'll recently, they know somebody.
A year ago, Johnny Krupe died of an overdose right here in this room. His parents, Candace, and her husband, Barry Krupe, were both home when it happened.
I was watching TV and he came in and gave me a kiss on the cheek and he went to bed. And the next morning I woke up and he was dead.
And he had a bag of heroin, but he had one bag, or I don't even know. But
he had a bunch of bags stuck under him.
we didn't find any needle.
Yeah, these are from the funeral.
Many families try to hide the fact of an overdose.
The love of his life.
But the Krupes were proud of their son's long struggle to get off opioids, even as he slipped from pill addiction to heroin and finally to overdose.
I don't think my son ever would have went right to heroin. I don't think any of these kids are going to go straight to heroin. They're taking these pills, they think there's nothing to them. They're prescription pills, so they feel that they're safe. They take them and then they have to take more and more and more, and they get too expensive and they go to the heroin. And once they're on the heroin, it's very hard for them to get off it.
As the scale of Staten Island's opioid problem comes into sharp relief, people are starting to come out from behind closed doors. Tonight, Alicia Reddy has organized a community support meeting for more than 500 Staten Islanders. Danny, Kayla, Marco, and Candace are all here.
My name is Alicia Reddy, and I am overwhelmed by the amount of people.
Everyone here has come looking for help or willing to help, including dozens of recovering addicts who step forward to offer real-life warnings about opioid abuse.
Every 5 days in Staten Island, somebody's overdosing from opiates, but it doesn't stop at that.
Candace Krupe is asked to speak about her son's passing.
He had dreams just like everybody else. There's no yay at the end of Johnny's story because he didn't make it. He died last March.
The pharmaceutical companies have to know that all these pills aren't going to people with those symptoms. I mean, all of a sudden there's a rush like that for these pills. I mean, and they just keep pushing them out and pushing them out. I mean, it's their bottom line. They're making money, and that's all they're concerned with.
While many opioid painkiller manufacturers refuse to reply to this question of responsibility, Purdue, the makers of OxyContin, did provide some answers in writing, saying they take the misuse and abuse of opioids very seriously. Purdue are a leader in what's called abuse deterrence, making pills harder to crush, snort, or inject as well as creating extended release formulations to minimize the chance of overdose. However, abuse deterrents don't make opioid painkillers any less addictive. They don't make opiate withdrawal any less severe. And in fact, many of the next generation of abuse deterrent pills contain even more opioid payload, as much as 24 times that of a single Vicodin pill. Purdue maintains that their products are critical tools for pain management, and that the responsibility remains with the doctor and patient to manage the serious risks of use, including the risk of addiction. Many people, including within law enforcement, have said that does not go far enough.
I would like to force them to wake up and understand and acknowledge the significance of the harm that they've caused, and to fix it, to try to fix it.
Down low like thieves who lock themselves inside a closed store.
Danny Haley knows just about everything there is to know about drugs on Staten Island, including how to escape them.
I'm also a magician. So yeah, would you like to take a
He's had a substance abuse problem since he was a child. Technically, he's a poly addict. But Danny just calls himself a junk box junkie.
That was fair, right? Mm-hmm. I was smoking crack, heroin, methadone, Xanax, Adderall, PCP, drinking, liquor, all the same shot. It's never enough for somebody like me, you know? 3 threes. Then I got the 4 and the 5. I'm gonna have you follow the 3 one more time.
Amazingly, Danny managed to get off all of that, and he's been clean and sober for the last year and a half.
And that's the 4. What's that?
3.
No, it's the end of the card trick.
He's writing a new track about his recovery.
Nowadays I hold my head high. I used to look down. I got clean, got my whole hood proud. I feel like an on-the-spot thing. It's coming out sick.
Nowadays I hold my head up, but I used to look down. I'm clean right now, I got my whole hood proud. I got that good sound, rocking every flow like a pro. So if you want dope hip-hop, you know where to go.
The track's about how it took him overdosing twice in a single day to start his recovery.
My soul to the devil and the price was cheap. But now I'm back from the dead, I died twice in a week. I had a chat with the Holy Ghost, he sent me back. The good die young, and I ain't eligible for that.
I was in a hospital. The doctors had to bring me back to life. And I woke up like 4 days later. I was in a coma for 3 days. And the doctors actually told my parents I was going to be brain dead for the rest of my life. They were shocked when I woke up.
I came to the hospital and he had tubes down his mouth and in his nose, and it was just by the grace of God that he indeed did survive.
And that view of Danny in the hospital bed was Paul's first view of his son in years. Paul had long since told Danny that he wasn't welcome as long as he was using.
Hey Dad, how are you? What's going on?
What's up?
Not much.
Good to see you.
Paul Haley is also a recovered addict. Having generations of substance abuse is pretty common on Staten Island. But with both of them sober, they're closer than ever.
Lock it up.
Are you proud of them?
Indeed, absolutely, yes. My other 2 daughters have graduate degrees from major universities. However, I'm more proud of Daniel in him being in recovery.
Here's a picture of you when you were younger.
My family won't talk to me when I'm using. I'm not a nice person to be around. I'm sorry, this is a little hard to say. Now, my family's back in my life. You know, I went from 18 months ago, I'm on my bathroom floor in a fetal position crying because I was so miserable. I wanted to stop, but I couldn't. And here I am, I got tears of joy coming out of my eyes, you know? So thanks for everybody. You know, if anybody knows anybody that is struggling right now, me or any of the people you see standing here would be glad to help anybody else in that situation now. Thanks.
Just before Danny got sober, he wrote a track called Bottomless Pit about just how low he had sunk. Danny's a self-proclaimed junk box junkie who died twice in a day and still managed to climb out of that pit. And so he means it when he says call him if you need some help doing that too.
I can't hit rock bottom in the bottomless pit. I don't want to admit my life's a pile of shit. Don't know what the problem is, my last dollar and fist. Too broke to holler at chicks, I'm in the bottomless pit.